Greetings and welcome to Matrix Revealed presentation 27. There's a lot in the way of downloads has come today, and this is going to be a long one. It's going to be controversial, but it's questions you've all really got to start considering and thinking about. And these are things that do need to be addressed. I was listening to a song by a band called Hawkwind called Arrival in Utopia, and it's quite revealing in the lyrics. It goes basically along the lines of dreams of golden shiny towers, of lazy days and thrilling hours, fields of wonder, streets of fare, abound the ships we sailed through the air. Well, that's basically, we could say, is like Tartaria, but then in come the Phoenicians. So dreamed up steel and glass and wire, the days of wine and nights of fire, dreamt up dogs that talk like boys, all go to prove a running joy. So there you've got dogs talking like boys. What is this? Some sort of genetic modification, some laboratory experiment? But it's still, in a way, sort of showing that a running joy, sort of just running like a dog would do, and having enormous pleasure in nature from this. But then the revealing part, in some ways, of this song is, and now our dreams are true. We don't know what to do, because we don't like it here. There's nothing for us to fear from the mindless in Utopia. And it leads on to some very interesting questions that I think we all need to ask ourselves with this awakening in so many ways. Bear with me and I'll try and explain this. This is not an easy one to do, and I don't want to make it too long, but it's very hard to condense. I don't edit, partly because of lack of my computer skills, and knowing how I've been with doing desktop publishing, even the number of spaces and centering of words on a page, I'm very fussy with it, and if I had the luxury of editing, I'd probably spend way too long. And we've got to remember that the important part is actually getting the messages out with all of these things. So I have to agree with Matt on quantum of consciousness. With, you've got these bookends, as he's described it, and we're sort of within the bookends, and we need to sort of think outside of that. Now, it can be very easy while we're going through this spiritual battle to lose sight of, let's assume that this is all one, and this spiritual war is won, the dark side is defeated, and what have we got left? Clearly the messages I'm putting out in these videos, and many of us, we're going to find ourselves, should we say, redundant. And then what do you do from there? It's all very nice saying be self-sufficient, grow your own food. An idyllic painting would be of perhaps living in a log cabin, but that in turn, where do you draw the line with this? I mean, should we be chopping down trees to make log cabins, for example, because the log cabins are basically being founded on death? Is that really what trees are for? They're there to provide us with oxygen. Fine if they've fallen down, and then it's, shall we say, a gift, a windfall, rather than something that is actually cut down and deprived of its life in its natural form. I've got to look at all these things and address all these things. Let's take something to an extreme level. I'll give you an analogy, say like the Amish community. I love the concept of the self-sufficient community like that, as one example. But how far do you take it? Do we turn our back on the technology? Because I have to agree with what UAP channel was saying today, sort of going back to 1984, with the sort of advent of this information technology age. It is a very useful tool. We wouldn't be communicating it. In some ways, it is the Achilles heel of the dark side. It has allowed us to communicate. Um, so let's let's go to this. We'll go with this scenario that we've got this freedom now. It's all very well having all this love and light and wanting to save everybody, but consider also, let's think, like Mad Max, the original Mad Max film. You've got this, well, the first and the second film, you've got these gangs. Now, you imagine if you lived in a world where you only have natural law, and then you still have these people with this same mindset, and you might have one sort of charismatic leader that other people will sort of group round and follow, and they start going down this path of terrorizing people. I mean, you've seen the scenarios in, well, say like the Amish community who won't fight, and you get a gang like that, they just ransack through that community and basically destroy it. You see it with this depiction of the Middle Ages, where you've got the peasants and then you've got the sheriff of Nottingham's men who come along and they basically torch their homes and the people just scatter. And is that what we really want? So then, do we then need some sort of policing? And then we're back in the realms of the rules and things. I have had to make some little prompting notes for this one because it's going to be rather heavy, perhaps a bit controversial as well. But it is intended to be, because I want this to be thought provoking, because these are questions we do need to be asking ourselves. So, your 3D family, for example, your flesh and blood family. Well, what if they're not awake? Your children, your siblings, your parents, what if they still carry on this same mindset and they are in this new utopian world of natural law? And then you've also got to consider as well that not everybody likes growing things, and as Christine says on Holographic Multiverse, eternity could be quite boring. So, what do you want to get out of this? It's all very well being focused on let's get rid of the dark side, but what are you going to put in its place? Because you have to have this balance with light and dark anyway. I would rather go with the idea of containing the darkness, not destroying it, but let it destroy itself. And otherwise, we're creating a new monster. We, in some ways, become the dark side in that way. And maybe it does flip over. This is something Leon, on his Vanna vlog, touched on, the dark becoming the light and the light becoming the dark, and everything flipped over. So yeah, electronic communications. I mean, it would be ridiculous to just turn our back on things that we have been given that actually can be a huge advantage with the communication and the information. Obviously, it needs the information to be correct information, not misleading as it is now, because there is certainly a lot of information on social media and also on mainstream media that is part truth, part lie, and that is all done by design, of course, because it is never a black and white world of it's this or it's that. There is far more grey areas, and with a lot of the asleep, a total lack of the grey matter. I've said this before, it is a paradox that on the one hand you have all this information, and it is through discernment, as Jamie Lee has said on A Plain Truth for You. I want to come back to a point he's raised on a video, which I want to add to as well, and I agree with what he's saying through my own findings as much as anything else. Um, you've got this rebuilding of communities, and it is a case of, are we going to throw the baby out with the bathwater? There's the whole thing, and I do agree with Jamie. It's, as far as the truth seeking side goes, are you going to dismiss anything that doesn't quite fit your perception of things, for example? So let's run with what Jamie said on this one. I mean, David Icke, I know he made a video. I watched it myself, and I thought, well, let's see what he's got to say on flat Earth. And he just basically sat on the fence. And I think it's more, possibly he would sort of lose his following. I'm not getting into the ins and outs of who's controlled opposition and who is just not touching certain subjects, but I agree with Jamie on this. As far as purely the truth-seeking side goes, if people are not going to touch certain subjects like the vaccines, the 5G, the flat Earth, Tartaria, and many, many more subjects, it's what they don't say. But you've got to remember that with the controlled opposition, and a lot of people will say, oh, Alex Jones is a shill, for example. But I've said this before. Now, I think he has dropped a huge hint on this. Now, put yourself in his position, for example. He said that he has 4 children. Now, you imagine put yourself in the shoes of Alex Jones or anybody like that. Now, you've got a huge following, and you're putting the truth out there, and then one day you get that knock on the door, and there's your men in black, and they're saying to you, you can talk about anything you want, but we don't want you to talk about, just say for example, Jesuits or a particular secret society, for example. But you can talk about everything else, but not that. And if you do, we will murder your children. Now, what would you do in that position? Would you then run with still trying to put the truth out there and almost dropping hints that you have 4 children that are going to be a target? Because the system does show itself by its actions, and it does seem to operate on fear. You've only got to look at the way the dark side will shed some of its lower ranks by exposure in the media and the naming and shaming. You could say, I don't know, possibly Jeffrey Epstein would come under this category. There's certainly a large number of priests. It follows this narrative of the Dracula films, where the servants of darkness, when they are no longer of use, are expendable. And you can see this pattern in so many different things. Disgraced politicians. It does seem, it's not a case of everybody is in on it at these lower levels that are in the public face. The fear and the threat mechanism is enough to basically follow what we have in the UK, what they call the party whip system, sort of the looshing of the politicians. I mean, maybe that some of the lower entry levels with MPs or councillors or whatever the equivalent are in whichever country you happen to be in, do go into these things with genuine concerns and reasons, and they get themselves in too deep. Just as the same way with the Epstein thing with the young girls. Um, they're out on the streets maybe making $30. They've now got a chance to make maybe $300-400 for half an hour's work in the sex industry, shall we say. And money is a huge lure for a lot of people, especially if you're in a situation and you are stuck in that matrix. And it is a very persuasive tool. And before long, you could find yourself, you've been lured into something and you can't get out of it. It seems to be very much like the cries of help, as it were, when some of these people in Hollywood and the music industry seem to go off the rails, and it's like, oh shit, I've got myself in too deep. I need to try and I can't free myself out of this, but I want to do the right thing. I'm not saying this is how it is, but I'm trying to look beyond those bookends and look at a far wider picture with this. And you've got to also consider, I mean, this thing about with this awakening and letting go. I mean, we talk about letting go of material things, but what about your family when they're stuck in 3D? How far are you how far and how willing are you to go down this spiritual path if it means you do have to let go of your family? Now you've got to ask yourself these questions. These are awkward questions that you need to go within yourself to actually answer. So like with the let's go on, move on to another bit now. The looking without and the looking within as well. Bear with me while I'm. This was actually first thing this morning. I wish I'd have made this video because it was a lot clearer then. But this is why I've had to make these prompting notes as an aid to myself, because it is always a case of I wish I'd have said that afterwards, or I wish I could have. See, I could just keep editing and not get the message out and re-record something, which it defeats the object. But you've only got to look at the nature of how this dark side operates. It may even be like the twist on the right and left hemispheres of the brain, the 90% and the 10%. It could be that 90% is truth, and it's only 10% that is actually an outright lie. I've had comments about particular people and particular channels saying, oh, this person or that person is a shill. Well, yeah, lots of people may have said that, but there is always an element of truth in what they say. And don't just tell me, oh, that person's a shill. Give me your reasons why you think that person is a shill. We can all have suspicions. I could point the finger, I could name names. I'm not going to, because you're falling for the divide and conquer when you do that. Because it is never clear cut, black and white. It's never that person's right, that person's wrong. There's nothing to say that I've got everything right, and I don't believe I have got everything right. I can only give you my interpretation on how things come to me and how I spark off from other people. So let's have a look. I've got to look back on the notes here. So yeah, it is all about questioning. Now, there is another aspect to this as well. You've got the purely spiritual, the esoteric side, and then you have the truth-seeking side, and I'm trying to link the two together. You can stay totally on the spiritual side and ignore all the rest of it, but the pattern I'm seeing, and I'm going to do, I'm planning to do a survey where I'm actually going to go out in public, and I'm looking to ask 50 to 100 people and just very simply say to them, have you seen anything about the fires in Australia? Have you seen anything in the fires in California? And see if and I just want a yes or no answer to that. And then I'm going to say to them, do you think these are natural events? and again, a yes or no, and I will come back with what I know. I think I know what the answers are going to be to this, but when we're looking at this whole Tataria subject, for example, it's what is called as those vanilla skies, and look at what most of you can probably see on a daily basis. You've got this blanket cloud cover. You've got these fires in Australia. You've got these fires in California. We know that it's direct energy weapons. The greater masses are probably totally unaware of this. They wouldn't even consider it because they're of the mindset of the dark side is thinking like them, and oh no, they wouldn't do that. Well, no, they wouldn't do that if they thought like you, but you're dealing with a system that is psychopathic. If they want to take out one person, they will sink a ship with 1,000 people. I mean, even the Titanic thing, to what depths will you go? It is shown straight there with that. A lot of a great depth, just to take out. The story goes 3 people to set up the what do they call it, the Federal Reserve, for example. 3 wealthy men standing in the way, so we sink a whole ship just to get rid of those 3 people, to bring this thing that they want in. And you can see this pattern with so much, and same with these fires and all this freak weather. And I would say that pretty much all our weather is geoengineered. It is weaponized weather. And just look back and look at what all the channels that are showing you about Tataria and things like San Francisco and the earthquakes and things, and the fake narrative that we've been given. And you can see it's unfolding before our eyes today in small areas, bit by bit. And yes, maybe there was one big apocalyptic flood, but it seems to be a progressive area by area thing. And also you'll see as well, you'll get a success story in one country that maybe has found the answer to the plastic problem, how to actually use it in a good way. So why aren't the other nations of the world all latching onto this and doing the same thing? And you'll see the same pattern. It's like little test runs of how to clear up the mess afterwards, after what seems to be heading towards a reset. So difficult subjects, not easy things to talk about, probably things that a lot of you don't even want to face, but you've got to actually go and ask yourself about all these things. Something else I was thinking about, and I was going to do a little visual analogy to this, and I've got the answer sitting right in front of me. But I've done 2 versions of it. So here, look, we got, now don't focus on what it is, but look at what we got, right? Here's your film, your veil, over the top of it. It's still the thing underneath, but it's got a veil. It's the same as this. It's a book, but you can see it's a book. But look, it's got a film, a layer over the top of it. And that, I would say, is what this 3D reality is as well. It's a carbon copy. This is why we're carbon life forms, and we are subject to time in this linear reality. But it's pretty clear that the dark side cannot create. They can only copy, and they can only twist an existing idea. So you can see that this earth actually is beautiful, but it does have this film or layer, and it is lifting that film or veil, basically removing it. And even perhaps I've suggested this, and I think other people can see it as well. Even an optician will tell you that the light that goes into the pupils of the eyes goes right to through I don't even know what the terms are. They go right to the back of the mind, and it forms like an X and you flip everything over. So this being an earthing plane, we perhaps it is a polarity and we are actually upside down and we are on the underside of it, and this reality actually is beautiful or can be beautiful, but it has this layer, this veil over it. So how long we gone here for? So what, 25 minutes, 25. That's a pretty good place to stop. So there's a lot to think about in this, I think, and I would suggest you go back, make some notes. Look, this is going to be a fantastic year ahead. It doesn't matter what the date is or the year is, because I think it was Napoleon is quoted as saying that his story is an agreed lie, and we want to make it our story. I've said before that regardless of what the real truth is about Tartaria, and I would only take out of that the essence of it, of the utopia and the perception that we have of what it may well have been, and to bring that part through and actually make it into this reality and make it into a beautiful world. So I'm going to leave that there, because I could just keep talking about this and I'd probably end up going over bits all over again.